Specialist 4, Michael Marceau, United States Army, Vietnam. Folks, I interviewed Michael in Bethesda, Maryland. It was March 2nd, 2008. I was there doing interviews with some veterans, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. And I met Michael, just a great guy, wonderful demeanor, told a great story. He's a disabled American veteran. And he told me a story. He served with the 278th Signal Company, 43rd Signal Battalion, which was part of the 1st Signal Brigade, one of the largest outfits in Vietnam. He was actually drafted on his birthday in 1969, his 20th birthday. Found himself in Vietnam later that year and was severely wounded on May 6, 1970 by shrapnel from a rocket attack. And his left arm and hand were paralyzed for a number of years. He was in the hospital for probably over a year with his recovery. But like I said, he's a disabled American veteran, and this tells a great story of what he saw there and what he experienced in the Signal Company. And it's just a wonderful story. Not a lot of stories from people from these companies, but Michael told me a great story, and I'm glad to hear it. Purple Heart, of course, for his wounds. And he resided in the Montgomery County area, which is outside of Washington, D.C., a suburb of Washington, D.C. And like I said, I interviewed him in Bethesda, Maryland. And it's been about almost 18 years ago. Wow. And I want to thank Norman Roselle. Norman came to me about a month ago and said he wanted to sponsor a story. Norman served during Vietnam in the Navy, United States Navy, from 68 to 70. And he wanted to sponsor a story in honor of Joseph Donet Noel, who was killed in action in January 1967, served with the 4th Infantry Divisions, Company A, 2nd Battalion, 12th Infantry. And God bless his memory. He was a young man, was killed in action, and Norman wanted to just sponsor a story in his memory. So we're going to do that, Norman, in honor of Joseph Noel. And just thank you, Norman, for stepping forward. Thank you for believing in what I'm doing and wanting to sponsor a story, Norman. Norman's up in New York, and just God bless you. I want to salute you, Norman. I really appreciate you. We've talked a couple times on the phone, and just a great man. I know you are. You have a heart for our veterans and our country, and I say God bless you for it. Maybe we can work together again. Folks, if you'd like to sponsor a story in honor of somebody that was killed in action, was in the military, somebody in your family who never was able to tell their story, get a hold of me. There's information in my video descriptions and all my videos below the video and in my comment section and on my website, larrycapetto.com. I really encourage you to do that. It would help me continue. I have hundreds of stories still in my archives. I'm getting out there trying to do more interviews this year with the Vietnam vets again, kind of coming out of retirement, and it's all good. So I've got a waiting list of Vietnam vets that want to be interviewed. It's growing every day. So, but if you'd like to become a part of my work, please contact me. It'd be greatly appreciated. Folks, let's honor Michael Marceau right now, and just thank him for his service. He's still with us. I think he's about 76 now. And we just honor you, Michael, and thank you for telling me your story. And we're going to honor you now. And if folks, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Share these videos and tune into Voices of History Radio. It's a great platform to tell these stories. All the stories that air here will eventually be over there. So Voices of History Radio, you can download the app for free at the Google Play Store, and you can listen to it on different platforms across the internet. So, okay, gotta go. Thank you. God bless you.
in 1969. I got my draft notice on my 20th birthday in January of that year, so I was not real pleased with that present.
Well, did you feel a sense of duty to serve your country?
Well, actually, my dad was a career Navy man, so I figured I would do my 2 years and get out and resume my civilian life, and kind of didn't quite work out that way.
What were your thoughts about Vietnam at that time? Were you afraid that you might go, or is that inevitable that you would go, or how'd you feel about all that?
Well, one of the things that I think about nowadays is that I was very unaware of the world situation. I mean, Vietnam was in the headlines, you saw it on the 6 o'clock news, but other than that, I didn't know much of the details at all. So it was part of the draft that you got drafted, you went to basic, you went to advanced training, you went to Vietnam, and that was pretty much the set itinerary there for the youngsters.
You said your 20th birthday?
Yes.
You got your draft notice.
Yes.
So where'd you go to basic training?
I went to basic training at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, which was not the funnest place to be at that time. From there, we went to Fort Gordon, Georgia for advanced training, which was a signal school down there. I was a telephone switchboard operator in Vietnam, so it was one of the only air-conditioned buildings where I wound up at the base camp of the 4th Infantry Division. So that part was not too bad, the air-conditioned part.
Now, you were with support of the 4th Infantry, right? Now, what actual company or division or regiment were you in?
I was.
Battalion?
I'm sorry?
Signal Battalion?
I was actually with the 278th Signal Company, which was under the 43rd Signal Battalion. And all of the signal units in Vietnam were under the 1st Signal Brigade, which is kind of a misnomer because that brigade had about 25,000 men, which actually was the biggest unit in Vietnam.
What was your rank at this time?
I went over there as an E3, which is private first class. I made Spec 4 over there sometime, I think, in early 70 after I'd been there 5 or 6 months.
So what year, 1970 in Nam or 69?
I got there about September of 69.
What do you remember about arriving in country? The first time you arrived there, the smell, the geography, the weather. What do you remember when you got off the plane?
Well, it was kind of a mixture of a lot of things. We were pretty nervous, a lot of young guys on the flight. It was a 707, which was a huge aircraft. We left, I think, Travis Air Force Base around San Francisco. Hawaii, Wake Island, Guam, Philippines, not necessarily in that order, but about 24 hours we were on an airplane. So when we got down, it was probably about 11:30 or so in the morning, quarter of 12, just before noon. So they opened the door and the heat and the humidity just kind of, boom, smacked you in the face like a wet mop. And the second thing I noticed was the smell. It was like we had landed in the middle of a garbage dump, with that kind of smell of a little bit of everything burning. We found out later, of course, that was one of the ways they disposed of the human waste by putting them in big burn buckets, dumping kerosene in on them, and lighting them. And that was kind of the backdrop of my arrival to Vietnam. The other thing was there were some other people going back for second or third tours, and they were very nonchalant about it. And what they didn't bother to tell us was that at noon every day, they had the noon whistle, which was an air raid siren, which you'd hear on your firehouses. So we're walking across the tarmac about 10 minutes in country, and the siren goes off, and we're thinking, oh my God, we're being attacked already in our first 2 minutes in country. So of course the new guy, the older guys had a laugh at us new guys, and they just said, all right, we're going over here to the barracks and get processed in, so it's no big deal. So after we kind of caught our breath after that, we just went joined the parade of the other people checking into the in-processing unit over there.
And your particular job was communications?
Right, I was a telephone switchboard operator. If you've seen those old movies where the little old lady with the headset and the different banks of lights, colored lights, and the wires, and a number please, that's exactly what we had there. This was high technology back in 1969.
So now you're at a base camp most of the time.
Right.
That you're there.
Yes.
Tell me about the rocket attack that you were injured. Tell me about what happened and what happened to you.
Well, this was May 6th of 1970, one of those days that'll always stick with you. And what happened is, looking back on it, a week or two before that, President Nixon had ordered the bombing of Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand with the big B-52 raids. I believe that was called Operation Rolling Thunder, which is where the motorcycle ride every Memorial Day got its name. So we were pretty close, maybe 20, 25 miles from the border there. And I guess the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong got a little upset with their peace and quiet being disrupted by all these B-52 raids. So apparently what happened is that they had some rockets that I think they were 105 millimeter rockets, which stand about 4.5 or 5 feet tall. They're about 5 inches in diameter. The top half is explosives, the bottom half is a solid rocket fuel. And these North Vietnamese and Viet Cong were just very industrious and very determined. They would actually carry these rockets on their back from their sanctuaries to get close to a base camp, to a military, U.S. military installation. And in a brilliant stroke of military planning, they put our unit right next to the airport. And because our unit used big, tall communications towers, they had to have little red lights over the top of them so the airplanes wouldn't hit them coming in. So you could see them from miles away. So apparently these North Vietnamese guys, and Viet Cong guys sat outside the perimeter 3 or 4 miles and just aimed at the pretty little red lights and dropped about a dozen rockets in on us one morning. I heard the air raid siren, we heard a couple rockets hit, and we could tell they were getting closer, so we figured, well, there's probably time to get to our bunker outside. So I got caught between the front door of my barracks and the bunker and took a piece of shrapnel in the back. It went through my lung, hit a rib, ricocheted back up into my left shoulder where it hit my nerve trunks and paralyzed my left arm completely. It was not a good way to start a morning. But luckily I was with a couple buddies who saw me go down and not get back up. They came over and grabbed me and threw me into a Jeep, which some South Vietnamese troops had abandoned at one of the earlier rocket hits a minute or two before that. So this Jeep was just in the middle of the street with its engine on. So these guys grabbed me, my buddies grabbed me, threw me in the Jeep, and within about 10 minutes I was into the emergency room of the 71st Evac Hospital, starting about 12 hours of surgery. As put Humpty Dumpty back together again the best they could. So
were you unconscious all this time, or?
Yeah, this happened Wednesday morning, I think 7 o'clock or 7:30, and the next thing I know, it was Friday afternoon about dinner time. I mean, I had a couple of very brief moments of consciousness during there. I remember the colonel from our battalion came in and pinned a Purple Heart on my pajamas, and some other people were changing bandages at one point, I think, but I don't know, for about 2.5 days I was pretty much doped up. They had this wonderful narcotic called Demerol, which is synthetic morphine. I didn't feel anything for about 2.5 days, like I said, but I had some really strange dreams during that time. So I don't know, I guess you get the good with the bad.
So today your arm is not working right. I mean, you're disabled?
Yes, I'm medically retired in early 1971 from the military with a 80% disability rating. I get a monthly compensation check from the Veterans Administration for that.
So you're talking shrapnel off of one of these rockets. It hit and the shrapnel goes flying, and that's the purpose of it, right? I mean,
Exactly, yeah. What happens is the front half of this rocket just shatters into thousands of pieces. And the doctors that did the surgery on me said the piece that got me was about the size of a jelly bean. And
that's it, huh? And did
that's,
all that damage. Huh?
Yeah, well, you got to remember that this is at a high rate of speed, and I was probably no more than 20 to 25 feet away from the impact. So it was a pretty nasty wake-up call, as it were.
It's amazing how man invents these weapons that are so lethal. I mean, who would have thought, you know?
Yeah, and one of the other lethal things that our side did too was, instead of using the metal ball bearings, what they actually did was use some kind of hardened plastic so that you couldn't see them on X-rays. I mean, they take a picture, they wouldn't see anything, but the people would still be complaining about their insides being hurt. So it was, yeah.
How long were you in country before you got wounded? A few months?
Probably about 8 months, I guess.
You were there that long?
Yeah, I think I had started my short timers countdown calendar. So you check off the days every day, and so yeah, from about beginning of September to about the beginning of May. So that's about 8 months, I think.
How much interaction did you have with the ground troops? I mean, you're in a base camp. I mean, did you interact with the troops going out in the field, out in the bush and all that, or?
Very little. I know that close to our unit at the base camp, there was a battery of what they call 155 millimeter guns, which were track-mounted weapons, which they would fire a shell about 8 inches in diameter. They could hurl out about 10 or 12 miles, I think, and every evening they'd crank out about 10 or 15 or 20 rounds just to kind of say, hey, we're here. But I think this is, like I say, the early 1970. And I think at that time, everybody had just kind of settled into a routine. We were not near any jungles. Most of the places around the base camp had been cleared or bulldozed or burned down or whatever. So, I mean, there was not really a way that any large enemy forces could get near us without being detected. So it was just kind of saying, well, here's our territory, and everything else you guys can have. And but every once in a while, you'd see someone in the mess hall or in the PX and talk with them. And
Did you ever wish you would have been out in the field on the front lines or whatever, with the guys? I mean, is that something that you could have done, or you just ended up where you were, or how it come about?
I think our unit actually did send patrols out every couple weeks or something like that. You can volunteer for that. But I was happy where I was. I didn't feel the need to go tromping around in the jungle and trying to show how brave I was. I thought I'd be a little smarter than braver, but they still found a way to get me. So,
What are your thoughts about your service? I mean, the country at that time. I mean, back home, support or lack of support of the troops. Did that infiltrate into your base camp? And did you guys ever talk about that stuff? Or I mean, were you hearing reports about the troops not being welcomed home and all this stuff? Or
yeah, we heard all that. I mean, we got Armed Forces radio, which some of that we thought was censored, but they did do some straight reporting about some of the little demonstrations and actions and pickets and that kind of stuff. And actually, a lot of us younger guys were very in favor of all the demonstrations and actions like that, petitions and that kind of stuff, because we were going to go back and join them after we got out. I mean, but my parents, my mom was actually in the military during World War II as well. That's how she met my dad. She was very against that stuff. My dad really didn't say it, but I kind of think he was against it too. And there was at one point my next door neighbor put up a huge peace sign on his chimney with bright red lights, probably about 10, 12 feet in diameter. And my mom really disliked that big time. But I thought it was pretty cool. So I came back home and went over and said, hey, thanks for doing that. But we saw some of this stuff, and again, it was kind of, the military was kind of a reflection of the country, and that some folks, especially the older folks, the career people, oh, them unwashed hippies and that kind of stuff, the same sentiment that the civilians back here were engaging in, and us younger guys said, yeah, go get us home. So.
what do you think we've learned as a country from Vietnam today? I mean, we've obviously learned some lessons. What do you think we learned that maybe we're doing better today with the troops?
Oh boy.
Or with the situation over there? I mean, 'cause
What?
we're kind of in a similar boat right now, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but in similar situations, I mean, we went into Vietnam the same way we went into Iraq. We didn't know anything about the culture or the people or the history of the land. We just kind of jumped in there, supposedly wearing our white hats and being the good guys and protect them from the bad guys. And I just think a lot of that stuff in both situations was misrepresented by the people in power. I mean, the Gulf of Tonkin incident was pretty much manufactured, as were the 9/11 link to Saddam Hussein, which was totally fabricated, as was the drum beats that they had weapons of mass destruction, which had been disproved by the United Nations inspectors over there and the IAEA, which is the International Atomic Energy Agency, which had inspectors over there for years, and neither of those groups found any kind of credible programs of weapons of mass destruction. So that was another lie from the administration.
So now, okay, I'm thinking of a couple things here. Just you kind of mentioned a little bit about the group you're with. I mean, the sentiment of the troops. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people that have been in combat in Vietnam, and they just felt like, they were doing what they were called to do. And when they came home, people didn't appreciate that. But don't you think we've learned that lesson today, to welcome our troops home?
Well, yeah, that is one of the differences between Vietnam and today, although things have turned around in another way too. I think when we Vietnam vets came back, we were completely ignored by the civilians. I mean, I hear stories of people being spat on and garbage being thrown on them. I think that did happen in very rare occasions, but that was not very commonplace at all. One of the things that the Vietnam generation was able to take advantage of was the benefits from the Veterans Administration. I went through college on something called a vocational rehab program, where The Veterans Administration paid for all my schooling, gave me an allowance every month for living allowance, plus they picked up books and fees and supplies and stuff like that. Nowadays, it's much harder to get that stuff. But again, comparing the welcome that we didn't get to the welcome that the Iraq and Afghanistan vets are getting today, that's one of the things that the civilians are stepping up to. They're saying, hey, we thank you for your service. We appreciate you being over there. Even though they may not agree with the reasons why we are over there, they certainly acknowledge the presence of the troops and the jobs that they did. And I think that the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which was dedicated in 1972, had a lot to do with getting the people to be able to separate the war from the warrior. And I think that is one thing that we have learned today, to acknowledge the presence of and the sacrifice of those in the military community, in spite of the fact that we may not agree with why they're over there.
What was the hardest part of your job or your tour in Vietnam?
Probably the boredom. I mean, like I say, at that time, most of the hostilities had pretty much moved out of our particular area. We were around Pleiku in the Central Highlands, so I was just going to work on every day, getting off. I was on a night shift from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So just sitting around at 2 o'clock in the morning with no traffic. Of course, most of the normal people, the sane people, were in bed by that time, so they weren't making phone calls. So I did write a lot of letters. I was in contact with family and friends back here. Read some books. We were able to get magazines and paperbacks and stuff at the PX on base. So I tried to keep up with that a little bit.
How about obviously the hardest part was getting injured too. I mean that was probably the worst part of your tour. But how about just the morale of the troops? I mean, was it positive? Was it negative? What was it like?
Again, I think it depends on your background. A lot of us young guys were just saying, okay, I'm doing my time for my country, and as soon as I get out of here, get back home, pick up my life where it was, go back to school, get married, have kids, all that kind of stuff, get a career. And the military people, the career people, were just saying, all right, what's next down the line? They get another tour of duty, another chance to earn a medal or two, or get a promotion maybe. So it's kind of two different tracks going on there, and there really wasn't a whole lot of interaction at that time. The career people knew the mindset of the younger people, and we kind of knew the mindset of the career people. So there wasn't a whole bunch in common then.
Did you have interaction with the helicopters? You're at a base, they're coming in, leaving. Is there a hospital right there? And did you ever help with the wounded or anything like that? Or was that being all happening on your base or not? All that type of activity?
Well, actually, when I got wounded, I had moved away from the base camp of the 4th Infantry Division. We had actually located into a bigger base where there were Army and Air Force, and I think Marine Corps people there as well too, because they were starting to downsize some of the units and consolidate some of the different groups and move them back off of the front lines, as it were, more toward a more secure area. So that's where I was when I got hurt. We had only been there a short time, so we were still trying to figure out the routine a little bit, and hadn't quite gotten up to speed on that.
Were there helicopters though coming in and out of your base?
Yeah, because it was a hospital there. I mean, we were at the base camp. We were several miles from the hospital, but you could still see the helicopters. And especially after I got wounded, I was there for about a month, and every 10 to 15 minutes there was a helicopter coming in and landing because, like I said, there were a lot of casualties as a result of the Operation Rolling Thunder. And of course, when the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army came over the border from the sanctuaries, our guys were sent out to engage them. So that kind of ramped up the casualties a lot.
What about, did you have any interaction with any of the patients at the hospital? Did you talk to any of the guys? Do you remember anything, conversations, or were you just kind of out of it?
Not really. I was still on some heavy duty drugs there. I mean, they were kind of decreasing the dosage as it were every day, but at that time, I was still pretty much in bed. I was not able to get out and walk around.
And how soon did you go home after all that?
It was probably about a month. I think I got hit the beginning of May, and middle of June, I arrived back at Walter Reed. There was a week in a hospital in Japan at the very end of month just to kind of make sure I was stable enough for that 15 or 18-hour flight from Japan to Andrews Air Force Base.
So you were in Walter Reed for a month or so, or?
Actually, I was at Walter Reed Hospital for about 8 months.
Wow.
Most of that, I got to say, was on paper. My parents lived here in Maryland, about 10 miles from Walter Reed Hospital. My dad worked in D.C., so he would drive into work every day in D.C. and come back home. So after about 2 weeks, I said, hey, I'm not staying here, I'm going home. So I kind of gave myself permission to be a commuter patient, although the Army didn't catch up with that for another week or two. They caught me one Friday night and said, where are you going? I said, I'm going home, I'll see you Monday. They said, you can't go, you don't have orders. I said, bye. At that point, what are you going to do with me? I mean, I've been hurt, I'm getting ready to be retired. So I was going home to Mom's home-cooked meal. What better way to end a week than that?
How did you feel, though, being a wounded, having been wounded in Vietnam? Was there a pride for that? I mean, or how do you feel as far as, your country and just, you were wounded in combat? I mean, so, I mean, is there a pride that goes with that?
In a sense, I guess it is in a weird way, but one of the benefits, if you could call it that, of being wounded, I didn't realize until years and years later. With my particular injury, I had complete paralysis of my left arm and hand because there was a nerve injury in my shoulder. So for about 3 years, I had to wear a brace on my left arm, a weird little contraption that kind of strapped on with some straps. Had a little piece of metal that came out above my fingers with 4 little rubber bands holding my fingers up so they wouldn't curl out into a ball from atrophy and the degeneration of the nerves and muscles. And and this was in a sling, so for about 3 years I had to wear that. People would say, hey, what happened to your arm? And I would say, well, I got hurt in Vietnam, da-da-da, and this, that, and the other thing. And it wasn't until about 20 years later when I accompanied a friend of mine to a group of Vietnam veterans who were in a program actually sponsored by the Veterans Administration. It was a Vietnam veterans outreach group. They would meet every week for a couple hours and talk about what was bothering them or how they were dealing with their Vietnam experiences. And this was 1988, 1989, so almost 20 years after I got back. There were people in that group who had not talked about their Vietnam experiences to anyone except other than Vietnam vets. People in that group, their parents, their wives, their people at work, their neighbors, all they knew was that Mike was in Vietnam and he doesn't want to talk about it. So when you sit on your experiences for 20 years and don't have the chance to share them with anyone, don't have the chance to decompress, to release those feelings, it's just gonna hurt you psychologically, and that's part of the PTSD syndrome too. So looking back on it, my having experience to talk about my injury because of that brace and that sling was a huge safety valve. I got to vent a lot of stuff just by being able to talk about it, where these other guys had not had that luxury. So in a perverse way, it was kind of fortunate that I did have that visible wound.
Do you associate with Vietnam vets much today, or, I mean, 5 or 10 years ago, or is it something that you just stay apart from?
Actually, I think a lot of us just kind of wanted to go about our way. When we got back, we were shunned not only by the civilians, but by the other World War II vets and Korea vets, because they thought we lost the war. I mean, we were not welcomed at American Legion Post. We were not welcomed at Veterans of Foreign Wars Post. They looked on us as long-haired hippie drug users, all those kind of negative words that were bandied about in the late 60s, early 70s to us returning vets. So we just kind of said, okay, you don't want to do anything with us, we'll just kind of form our own little thing. We had to give ourselves a parade when we got back. We built the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. That was done by private contributions. That was not done by any kind of government agency or anything. Jan Scruggs, who was a founder of Vietnam Vets Against the War, I believe, was the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, sorry. But he was a fundraiser behind that, and private citizens and of course a lot of veterans from Vietnam contributed to that. It has now been turned over by the Park Service to the National Park Service, which maintains that and updates that and is in charge of making sure that that's safe and available to people who want to come down and pay their respects to those who lost their lives. One of the other things I've gotten involved with the last couple of years is a group called Veterans for Peace. That has some Vietnam vets in it, that has some World War II veterans in it, has some Gulf War I veterans in it, and a lot of Iraq vets and Afghanistan vets as well. So we're all working together to try to mainly make sure that the current veterans get the benefits that they're entitled to and that they've earned by their service.
Have you been to the Vietnam Wall then? Obviously, you probably have.
Actually, I've been a couple of times. The first time was very interesting. It was not till 1991 when I went down. And I actually rode down with a bunch of other veterans and friends of mine who were part of that Operation Rolling Thunder. So that was quite a moving weekend for me. I think I did a little crying, a little laughing, and a lot of hugging with some other veterans. Of course, you wear your Vietnam ribbons and medals and your jackets or your patches and whatever, so you're easily identified as a Vietnam vet. And I think a lot of what we heard that weekend was "Welcome home, brother," and that was, like I say, 20 some odd years afterwards. So that's the first thing I say to Iraq and Afghanistan vets is "Welcome home" and thank you for serving.
Yeah. Did you know any of the names on the wall, or the people that you knew that were killed?
I knew a couple people from back home. Nobody in my unit, thankfully, was killed in Vietnam. Like I say, we were kind of in a secure area, but there was one guy who was a few years older than me, used to come down here from Pennsylvania and spend the summer with his uncle around the corner from me. So I was maybe 14 or 15, and he was 18 or so. So he was kind of my adopted big brother for several countries, or for several summers. And when I'd heard that he was killed in Vietnam, it kind of made me sad that I'd lost this guy I was kind of close to.
Did you find his name on the wall? Do you remember?
Actually, I did. Yes, I've been down there a couple times, and I always look for his name. And there's actually another guy from Rockville too, which is my hometown, Rockville, Maryland, was killed the day after I got hurt. So when I go down and look for his name, I think he's on 10 West or 11 West. I look about 10 lines above that and say, if it wasn't for the heroics of some people at the 71st Evac Hospital, a bunch of dedicated doctors and nurses, my name would have been there too. So I would say a silent prayer of thanks to all the medical people who put me back together the best they could in some pretty brutal circumstances.
Why do you think you survived?
Who knows? I mean, that's a question that actually a lot of Vietnam vets deal with. A lot of vets of any wars deal with. You know, why did the guy next to me in the foxhole get killed, and why did I die, or why did I not die? Something called survivor's guilt, which can also play into the post-traumatic stress disorder. And again, I think that maybe I've been given a chance to do something with my life, whether it's educate people about Vietnam or some other issues that I care about. It's just, or whether to try to help someone else in any way I can. One of the things I'm very conscious of is donating blood on a regular basis. I've managed to donate blood over 100 times through the Red Cross, and actually the last 10 or 12 or so times have been down at Walter Reed Hospital. So I know that is a very useful thing, since during my surgery and the care at the hospital, I was transfused with about 10 units of blood, which is pretty much your whole circulatory system. So I was literally running on empty when they got me to the hospital. So it's very conscious. I'm very conscious of doing stuff like that.
Are you diagnosed with PTSD at all, or not?
No, I don't really think so. I mean, like I say, my being able to talk about it was a great release. Although I have to say, for a long time after I got back, any loud noise that I wasn't aware of, I would be likely to crawl under a desk or under a table or something like that. I was not real fun around 4th of July time, let me tell you.
What would you say to Vietnam vets that are watching this?
I'd say, welcome home, man. Thanks for your service. You did a great job in spite of the fact that not a lot of people were in our corner. So don't slight your service. Just be proud of the fact that you did serve when your country called.
How about to those vets that don't want to talk about it? What would you say to them?
It's part of the healing process. You have to let it go, man. You can come to terms with it, and you just realize that other people have been through the same stuff you're going through, and we've got through it. We have had help, and it's not a crime. It's not. Shouldn't be embarrassed about asking for help, because it's there, and God knows we earned it. God knows we need it. There are people trained in PTSD issues who can help talk through your problems and come to terms with that.
Why does this seem to be more common with Vietnam vets than World War II or Korea vets, the PTSD? What happened that was so different?
Well, again, I think it was in our lack of reception and the lack of acknowledgement of our service when we got back home. Another factor that plays into it was in World War II and Korea. From what I understand, most folks trained as a unit, went over there as a unit, served as a unit over there, came back as a unit. During that time, World War II and Korea, your service was for the duration, so you were there 3 or 4 years. When that service ended, when the war ended, you came back on ships, which were a journey of week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever it was. You had a chance to decompress, to talk with your friends, your fellow soldiers, your people in your unit about what happened, what you'd been through, how you can come to terms with that. And just by talking about it with people who have been through that similar situation, you can kind of release that anxiety, that stress. Whereas in Vietnam, you got plucked from your draft board, got sent to a unit for basic training, got sent to another unit for advanced training, got sent to another unit when you were in country. You served your year and got back. So you really were kind of walking down this path by yourself. And you really didn't want to get close to people, especially if you're in the front line unit, because you could lose your best buddy. So I think it was several things that factored into that, the difference between World War II and Vietnam.
Another thing that's alarming to me, Michael, is the number of Vietnam vets that have taken their lives after the war. I mean, why? I mean, they just lose hope, or, I mean, are they the guys that have the post-traumatic stress that can't talk about it? I mean, over 150,000 Vietnam vets have killed themselves.
Right.
War. That's 3 times as many as were killed during the war.
Exactly. Yes.
What are your thoughts about that? Why is that so high? Why is that happening?
Again, I think it's that we were alienated from the rest of the country. We were not extended that welcoming hand that the World War II vets, that the Korea vets, that the current vets are getting. We were kind of the orphan veterans, I guess. I don't know. And people said, and I can understand it too. They came back with the attitude, if you don't want to help me, then to hell with you. Then I'm going to do it on my own. And obviously there's a lot of homelessness involved in that, a lot of alcohol and drug use and abuse, a lot of anger issues that don't get addressed simply because people don't know that the resources are there.
That's quite an alarming statistic.
Exactly. Yeah, I work with a friend of mine who does some programs in some Washington D.C. public high schools, and that's one of the facts that he mentions is that if you were to build another monument for the Vietnam veterans who've committed suicide, it would be 3 times as big as the wall on the mall right now. And the thing is, that's why the Veterans for Peace groups are so concerned about making sure that money is available for mental health issues, whether it's through the military hospitals while you're still in service or whether it's the Veterans Administration after you get out of the service. We need to make sure that the money is there for those mental health programs, for those PTSD programs. We need to make sure that the mental health profession is training enough people to fill in those slots. The VA especially is so underfunded and understaffed that we see a lot more problems down the road if these aren't addressed very quickly and with the financial resources to take care of these veterans.
I don't know if I told you yesterday, but the VA has picked up my film and it's in all the vet centers now in the country.
Oh, that's great. I think that's a good thing.
They watched it. The head of the vet center is a psychologist, Dr. Batres, here in D.C.
Okay.
And he watched it and said it's a great tool. It has therapeutic value. He feels that will help Vietnam vets. I thought that's wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. I'm wondering if they would be willing to use that as a tool in the current hospitals, like here in D.C. at Walter Reed or maybe even Bethesda Naval Hospital.
That's the next step, and hopefully that's going to happen too. So.
Well, good luck with getting that done, and I appreciate your efforts in giving us a voice here and letting us share our stories. I think it's important for the stories to get out, and especially to the other veterans who haven't had the chance to tell their experiences. I know 35, 40 years out is a long time, but still we need to hear those stories, and you need to tell those stories too. We can't have that being lost in time, because every story is important. Behind every story is an individual.
That's exactly right. How did your military experience change you as a person? Or did it?
Well, I think the last couple of years I've gotten more involved in activities focused on veterans issues, like I mentioned previously. One of the things that Veterans for Peace is trying to get out there is, number one, we realize that a lot of the times it's the innocent people who get hurt the most. We believe that war should be the last resort and not the first resort. We believe that veteran services of any war should be acknowledged and applauded. We believe that the resources to take care of the veterans, whether they're still in the military or after they get out and need help from the Veterans Administration, we believe those resources need to be there, whether it's for mental health resources, which a lot of people are going to need, whether it's for the prosthetic stuff, whether it's for job training, whether that be through apprentice programs and trades, or whether it's through secondary education through colleges. We believe that the resources need to be there to take care of these people who stepped up and volunteered when their country said, hey, we need some help.
Michael, what does freedom mean to you?
Well, it means a lot of things. It means the ability to choose our own friends, the ability to choose our own jobs, ability to travel where and when we want to travel, the ability to speak up when we see something that's wrong, especially when it concerns our government, the ability to look out for others who may not have the ability or the knowledge to look out for themselves. And that's kind of a responsibility too, especially, like I say, in veterans issues. I think we have to make sure that our current veterans are getting the care that they need and deserve and have earned.
How about the price for freedom? You were wounded, men were killed. What would you tell a young person today who takes their freedoms for granted about the price or the cost for freedom?
Well, I would just tell them that for every right you have today, there were sacrifices made by others who were willing to step up and put their country ahead of their personal interests for a short time or for a career even.
How about the American flag? What does it mean and represent to you as a veteran?
Well, I see that, and other veterans have said the red, white, and blue stands for the red, of course, is the blood, and every time I see a blood, I say there's a couple of drops of my blood in that flag, and that's why I always kind of take a deep breath and say, hey, I'm glad I did my part. One of the things when we were in country in Vietnam, a couple times a week they'd show movies. Before the movie, they would play the Star Spangled Banner and do a panorama of a lot of the historic sites in this country, and they would always show the Capitol, the Washington Monument, the White House, Congress, the Lincoln Memorial, all that stuff that's in my backyard here. I was born and raised about 10 miles outside of Washington, D.C., so that would kind of get me think a little bit, say, hey, I need to kind of do my job over here so I can get back home and go visit these things in person.
What do you think our country should learn from Vietnam? What's the lesson? I mean, what should we remember about Vietnam? What should we remember about it?
Well, again, the sacrifices of those who were willing to put their country above their personal situations. We kind of, I hope this doesn't sound too vain, but we kind of have the ability maybe to look at the bigger picture and say this is important, that we do something that's bigger than us. I mean, we all have our own little individual interests that we put a lot of time and effort in, but maybe the veterans have a sense that there's a little bit of a bigger ideal here that we need to kind of speak up and take care of, so that the rest of us don't have to worry.
Are you proud that you're a Vietnam veteran?
Yeah, actually. People say, would you do anything differently? And of course I've considered rewriting the ending of my story, but then again, if I hadn't had gone down that path, maybe that wouldn't have made me as conscientious as I am today about some of the health issues that face veterans. Maybe it wouldn't have made me as compassionate as I hope I am. I do a lot of volunteer stuff, like I say, and I think that's part of letting people know that it's okay to be concerned about yourself in situations, but there comes a time when you need to be concerned about others as well.
And have people thanked you recently over the years for your service?
Actually, yeah, it's been very interesting. I have the hat on here with the little miniature combat medals. And last couple of years, I've taken part in marches, demonstrations, and actions down on Capitol Hill. And sometimes I'll just be walking down the street or on the subway, and people say, "You're a Vietnam vet?" I say, "Yeah," and I say, "Thank you," and that means a lot. I mean, would have been nice 30 years ago, but better late than never, I think. And if that lesson is starting to get to the American people, then that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I agree. Well, I thank you for what you've done. I mean, some guys think they didn't do nothing, but everybody has a part to play, so,
Yeah, I mean, some of the boredom, some of the hardship, being away from home for the holidays. I have some pictures of me with a little miniature Christmas tree in my barracks with a couple of strands of scraggly-looking tinsel and an ornament or two, and a couple of Christmas cards from folks back home, and that was my Christmas. But we appreciate it for what it is, and it makes the Christmases and other holidays back home that much more precious.
Well, you've got a good story, and my goal is to help tell the story, as you know. So this will be part of my second film on Vietnam, which will be done sometime. Well, it will.
Yeah.
I'm finishing Korea now, which nobody knows about.
Exactly.
These guys were totally forgotten. And the Battle of the Bulge, and then I'm working on my second Vietnam story. So,
well, good luck with that, and thanks for reaching out to the VA with your DVDs there. We appreciate that a lot, and I hope you can maybe work on getting them to some of the military hospitals where some of the Iraq vets can get a sense of that we share in their sacrifices, and we appreciate as veterans what they're doing now, especially those going back for their second and third tours. That still is amazing that folks are still having to do that.
Before you leave today, remind me to give you the phone number for a gentleman that works for the Veterans Affairs here.
Okay.
He's responsible for me getting my films in there. I think you should call him, tell him I interviewed you.
Okay.
And tell him exactly what you just told me about the Walter Reed, the other hospitals and the Iraqi veterans, because he wants to do that. Maybe you and him somehow can help get that to happen. So.
Okay, maybe we
are a Vietnam vet.
Right.
So,
and
I want you to do one more thing before I forget. The end of my interview is from where you're seated. You saw it yesterday. I asked the veterans to give me a salute into the camera. Can you do that when I tell you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Without flashing a peace sign? I won't do that.
There's a reason for this.
I know. Okay,
when you're ready, right into the camera. Go ahead. All right. Excellent.